Tyler Gibson joins me here today. You can find his links by heading over to Linktree/real_Tyler Gibson. That's real_Tyler Gibson. I'm going to have that as a clickable link in the show notes. Really appreciate your time, Tyler.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me today.
So I always like to hear the origin stories. Like, how did you find your way into real estate investing?
It's kind of interesting, but not really. I had a father that modeled a behavior of buying property and keeping it as rentals. Later, after I had gotten married, my wife and I both had salary jobs. We lived below our means. We had saved up a little bit of money, and I just had this idea we should buy a rental property. I didn't have a lot, so I did call my dad and said, "Hey, would you be the bank for me? Because I don't have 20% down." And he, I think he was proud that I was trying to do something like that. So he was willing to help me out. And also, I was willing to pay him interest. It makes me feel a lot better to pay him interest in a bank, right? So I went home, asked my wife. She didn't shoot it down. She was like, "Sure, okay." And found a property through a realtor that had helped us buy our first home. I didn't really know what I was doing, but bought that first rental property and I got that first rent check and I was hooked. I got $1,000 and I was so excited. I remember going inside the house, telling my wife, "I'm so excited. I got $1,000. We got to make more of this kind of money." She said, "We didn't make $1,000. We had expenses." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're killing my buzz." But it was that moment that I decided I wanted to be in real estate and I wanted to figure out how to make more passive income through real estate. I started educating myself a lot, found BiggerPockets.com on accident by looking for a property analyzer spreadsheet, calculator tool that I could analyze real estate as rental properties and try to find profitable ones. And that led me to BiggerPockets.com. So just kind of plug and play. And then found out they had a podcast, started educating myself a lot, and then started to go to meetups and found a wholesaler that had a deal and brought my dad in on that one. We bought it together. It was a big construction project and had lots of problems. I learned lots and lots of lessons. And yeah, just started building a portfolio slowly that way. And then decided to get a real estate license. Got that in 2019. And that was all because I was going to be a father and didn't want to trade my time for money forever and kind of wanted to have freedom. But I didn't plan to actually quit my job. I had a good job and I planned to use my W-2 income to fund more long-term rentals. But I thought having a license, having access to the data would make me a better investor. I could find deals faster, maybe earn some extra income by helping friends and family and grow my portfolio faster. And then I sold my first house and I was like, wow, that was really fun. I'd like to figure out how to do more of that. And I did it part-time for 2 years and then quit my job in October of 2021 and became full-time real estate agent and investor. And we continue to just try to grow that sales business within real estate, as well as continue to grow our personal portfolio. And we specialize in helping investors that want to get into the Florida market buy long-term rentals here. And if we find a flip, we'll send it to you, but those are hard to come by. And if I found a really great flip, I'd probably try to take it down myself.
Well, could you explain a little bit, like why the focus of Central Florida? Is that where you kind of born and raised?
No, actually, I'm a transplant. My dad was a minister. We moved around a lot, but I met my wife here almost 13 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. I went to college in Central Florida out of high school, and Florida became my home became my home a little more than 12 years ago. And now I have a wife and a child, and my parents now live here. One of my siblings now lives here. So it just became home base for me after moving around a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you compare it to the other markets you might be familiar with?
Central Florida?
Mm-hmm.
Central Florida is unique to a lot of markets because we're known for Disney World and Universal. There's a huge tourism draw to this area. And so it's really unique for that reason. But at the same time, there's a lot of growth that happens because of these industries and these businesses. It attracts a lot of people looking for employment. Tampa's a similar market. You could still somewhat consider that Central Florida because it's the middle part of the state. going across. There's the I-4 corridor that basically connects Volusia County or Daytona Beach to Tampa, essentially running through Orlando and then Lakeland. So, I mean, Orlando's a large metro market. It's smaller than Atlanta, but I would say it's similar in how it just can continue to grow at the edges.
Well, getting back into your real estate investing, can you share your biggest challenges, the challenge you faced and how you overcame it?
Yeah, the biggest challenge that we ever faced was in that project that we picked up in Daytona Beach. I bought it sight unseen. And that's a lesson that everyone should learn. Go see it or have somebody go look at it so that you have a better understanding. And so our project just became a lot bigger than we originally anticipated. But we just put our heads together and thought, well, how can we solve this? Who do we know that we could borrow extra money from, which is essentially what we ended up having to do. But once we were able to do that, we were able to get the properties back in a condition where we could get them rented, get some relief, and then we were able to refinance in order to make it all work.
Oh, the classic Burr.
And in those situations, I mean, it's pretty applicable to most real estate investment projects that you do. As investors, we make money for solving problems. I think the lesson I learned is you got to think about how you can solve something as opposed to think about what the problem is itself, and just ask yourself a better question. Who do I know that can help me with this? How can I go about solving it?
You mentioned helping other out-of-state investors invest in your Florida area. Can you give us the top 3 things that they should be aware of before investing in Florida?
Yeah, I would tell them to look very carefully at anything related to condos. That market has been extremely challenged ever since the condo building in Miami fell down a few years ago. And so there's a lot more expenses related to condos and a lot more regulations around condos. So people should be aware of that. Otherwise, look at the growth factors that you're looking at when you're looking at a city. What's powering the growth? Is it something superficial or is it something that's really underlying? Like Ocala, for example, is growing significantly, and I don't really understand why. I guess it's the World Equestrian Center that's there. That's what I'm told. But I just have a hard time believing that horses drive that much growth. But maybe that's just me being
Yeah,
ignorant how
I guess
big the horse
it's
world
horse of a
is.
different color.
I guess,
Well,
who knows?
so, well, you're a dad. At least you got my pun. So, yeah, it is kind of interesting the draw of certain things. Like in my market, a lot of people don't realize some of the things that are going on and what causes some of the draw. Like I'm in
Yeah.
the frigid north in comparison to you, especially in comparison to you. And I joke sometimes it keeps out the riffraff. So it's not for the weak. So, well, could you kind of break down like how do you mentioned you were looking for tools when you found bigger pockets to analyze properties? What do you use today to do that?
Oddly enough, I use a very similar spreadsheet that I used before. I mean, we use Google Docs now as opposed to Excel, but it's basically the same thing. Whenever you analyze a piece of property, it's mostly math, right? Because if the numbers are, if it's a great cash flowing property, you probably don't care so much about the location. If it's skinny, then the location really matters because the location is going to drive future appreciation and equity growth, right? But if it's, and I guess that's the other thing. That's mostly the tool that I still use today is that spreadsheet. We're heavily rely on data, which we have access to through the MLS.
It's still surprising to this day how much I use information, whether it's realtor.com or Zillow or the MLS directly. More times than not, that's end up being the point of truth on some things.
The MLS is straight sales data or leased history data. When people are asking us, what will this home rent for? I can see what's currently available. I can also see what's recently been rented in that area to give you an idea of what people have been willing to pay. Depending on how much competition there is, you get to decide, do you want to price better than the competition to get rented quickly? or do you want to push to try to get the most because you think your unit is that much better? And then we just let people decide, but it's all data driven.
In fact, data driven, and I'm going to call this out. You go to egghead.com, and that's HED.com. That's some AI tools I put together to help people run some numbers. So you can even leverage some AI models now to do some of that.
There was one called Win Now AI that they've given me a beta with. They're basically looking at specific markets, and you can give it some criteria and they'll send you properties that they think might fit your model. You can even, I think, give it an assumed offer price of XYZ below the list price. So there's some cool tools out there. We don't heavily rely on them. We focus more on just knowing what inventory is available, and then we run those numbers ourselves and bring the best ones to the investors that we work with.
So outside of finding properties off the MLS, then where else are you finding properties?
I did develop a cash offer website. We are FloridaHouseBuyers.com, but we focused on purely organic driven traffic. So we don't run any ads to it. We don't pay for backlinks or anything like that. We've just purely built it based off of good SEO models. I've got a good friend that's kind of partnered with me on helping to build that. And so we focus on just trying to rank up on Google, and we answer the phone when it rings.
Sure. Being a realtor, I'd be interested in knowing, based on your realtor experience, how has it impacted or changed your real estate investing?
Well, being a realtor has made me more confident as an investor because now I do so many transactions in addition to anything else that I get real comfortable with different problems and situations. And, really, truly now more than ever believe that you can fix just about everything except where a house is located. So there's a number where anything works. I think that's where becoming a real estate agent has helped. I tell people having a real estate license and being an investor is like having a license to do insider trading, because you can look up and see what something, based off of the data, you can get a really good idea of what something should be worth. And if you know that, and then you can subtract what your repair costs are, then you identify how much profit you want to have. You know exactly how much you should offer somebody in order to be able to make that work. And that can always be your first option when you meet with a seller. And then you start working through the other options. And so when I meet with sellers, it's, can I buy this and keep it as a rental? Can I buy this and wholesale it to an investor client of mine? Can I flip it and make a much larger profit? Or can I help this person sell it by listing it?
I like that.
It's like having a license to do insider trading because you know what something could be worth. And so when you meet with people, and again, we do it ethically. Anytime I meet with a seller, I tell them, the way you can get the absolute most for your home is by putting it on the retail market. You may need to do some work in order to actually maximize that value, but that's how you maximize the value in your home. But some people just don't want to do that. They want a different option. They want an option where they can just sign, grab a check, and walk out the door and not worry about anything else related to the home. And so, we give those people that option if they want it. Otherwise, we walk them through what their other options are.
I like that you pointed out that every property works with the right number. It goes back to the old adage, the money you make on these is at the purchase.
Yeah. You make your money when you buy, not when you sell.
So, this is one of those things that I wish I would have drive home a little better, is the concept that we get into the habit of, if we've spent the time to actually underwrite or come to our number, we will make an offer with that number. And if it doesn't work, so be it. But if it works, home run. You're never going to know the answer unless you submit the offer.
Right. In a soft Florida market where it's a buyer's market, we encourage every single person that we're talking to, whether or not they're buying their first home or they're looking to invest, We tell them, what number would it work for you? We should make that offer because that home's been on the market for 67 days now. And my guess is that they have somewhere they need to be if they're selling in this market.
So I'm going to press you a little bit more on out-of-state investors. Can you give me
Yeah.
any idea or of some of the common mistakes people make when investing out of town?
Just working with the listing agent, I think, can be a bad idea. Working with the person that responded to you from Zillow or Realtor.com may not be a great idea. That's not to say that those people don't have any idea what they're doing, but chances are they don't understand what it is that that investor is trying to do, because there's very little training for real estate agents, let alone about real estate investing, how to look up rental comps, actually having a list of vendors for the types of things that an investor is going to need: an electrician, a plumber, maybe even a full general contractor, having the right resource local that knows what it is that you're trying to do and may even talk you out of buying something can be a great resource. I can't tell you how many times I've talked people out of buying a Disney short-term rental in the last few months, but I do that because this is a relationship business. If they're a real estate investor and they want to invest here in Florida, we can help them find something, but I'm not going to sell them something. I'm going to educate them about what it's going to look like, whether or not it would be profitable. And if they want it for a vacation home that helps offset their ownership cost, great. I'm happy to help them buy it. But if they're looking for something that's cash flowing, I'll tell them that's probably not it right now.
Hmm.
So the Disney market is oversaturated with short-term rental units just available. And as a result, it's become a little bit of a race to the bottom. People are reducing their nightly rates to try to stay booked because they can't compete on any other level. So the only way to make money, in my opinion, in short-term rentals in the Disney area is to have larger size homes that are decked out and themed like to the nth degree. I mean, just think the coolest interiors you can think of. And then you have to have really good operations, cleaning crews. I mean, cleanliness is the number one thing that'll kill you in that business. And then you probably need to self-manage because that's where most of your profit is. Property managers that do short-term rentals charge between 15 and 30%, depending on who you hire. And that lower cost person, they're probably not as good of an operator as the higher end people. But that 20 to 30% is a lot of times that's your profit margin. So if you're paying that to a property manager, now you own this great house, but you're not really making any money on it. The appreciation in that market has been questionable lately. We've actually seen a big decrease in pricing in that area after COVID.
You either live and die by your operations, don't you? I mean, especially when it comes to short-term rentals. I've just never been able to get those numbers to work, and I don't understand how people can pull it off. It happens all the time.
I mean, I know people that are successful at it, but most of them are not in the Disney area or they bought at a really good time. So they've got very low expenses on it. I have a short-term rental. My wife and I have a short-term rental in Ormond Beach. So if anybody's looking for a two-bedroom, two-bathroom beach condo for a week or weekend, let me know. We can hook you up.
Is that on your link tree?
No, but I'll put it there. You better believe it. We'll put it out there. Thanks for the
Yeah.
reminder. We bought it for ourselves primarily, right? We wanted to have a place at the beach. It's about an hour and 15 minutes from our front door. Our daughter loves going to the beach. And so we wanted to have a place that we could go to. My rule is that if somebody else has to pay for it, so we have it rented out, and it pays for itself. It carries its own water, but we do self-manage it. So if I had somebody else managing it with the debt that we have on it, it wouldn't pencil. For me, the other benefit of owning it was accelerated depreciation and cost studies.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's the first thing that comes to mind is short-term rentals in the Florida market. I can imagine if they are overwhelmed.
So I think there's some good options in coastal areas, but condos are, again, a very challenged property type here in Central Florida. And so If you're looking for a single family home that's oceanfront, now you're talking about some serious income, some serious prices. So you can make money in short-term rentals here in the state of Florida. Not to say that you can't. It's just challenging. It's going to require a very large capital investment. And then you're going to need to have great operational excellence. And you're going to need to figure out how to self-manage or manage remotely. But I mean, I know that it is possible to manage a short-term rental with, an hour a week, but you have to build those systems. And so whether or not somebody has the capacity to build those systems, I can't speak to.
Well, what's the next big step for you then, whether it's being in your realtor world or in your investing world? What's on the horizon?
I always continue to look for interesting opportunities that we can take advantage of as investors. Most of my focus these days is built on our sales business. I lead a team of 13 agents here in Central Florida, focus on helping out-of-state investors buy and sell here in Central Florida. We can service the entire state of Florida, but we are local to Central Florida.
You are unique in that regard. It seems like there's this unwritten conflict between investors and realtors.
I've heard that, and I've heard lots of investors say that they would never get a real estate license. I worked in a lot of service industry jobs growing up. I'm a college dropout, so I don't have any formal education and worked a lot of service jobs. I love real estate, and so I merged the two into real estate sales. Because at the end of the day, real estate agents are really a service provider. We provide services for buyers and sellers to help them through the real estate transactional process.
The sales process for you, like what is some of the best training you've been through regarding that?
I don't know that I've been through a great real estate training sales process. I mean, if someone wanted to start a real estate business tomorrow, I would tell them to go read Larry Kendall's Ninja Selling. It's a great book about building a real estate sales business. And the whole book starts about mindset, living the ninja way. And that is all great motivational stuff and personal growth stuff too. But I think the principles he lays out in the book about how to go about building a business are so easy and anybody can do it. And it's a relational style approach where you don't have to have quote unquote a sales personality type, right? His methodology, anybody could do. But my entry into the business was very different. I sold my first house because somebody filled out a form on BiggerPockets.com. They fired their other agent, hired me, and then called me to tell me they wanted to write an offer on an open house that they had been to that weekend. I had just been really active on BiggerPockets.com. They knew that I understood real estate investing. I understood house hacking, and I spoke their language. And so they just trusted me more than the other person that they had been working with. But that's how I sold my first house. It was 6 months after I got my license. And then I actually just leaned into the BiggerPockets community to continue to meet new people and out-of-state investors that wanted to get involved here in the state of Florida. And we're still heavily involved in that, even to this day.
You said you weren't leveraging any kind of pay-per-click or anything like that. But to this day, the one thing that stays consistent is the network. I got people bringing me houses all the time as well. And that's paid more dividends than anything else.
We don't do any pay-per-click on our We Buy Houses website. I do buy leads in my real estate sales business. I'm a featured agent on BiggerPockets website. I have been since so that's part of my story is I participated in their beta testing of a find agent tool and I paid for leads. And that's how I met a lot of the past clients that I've helped and how it's helped me build the business that I currently have today and how we continue to meet new people and new investors. So it's a great program, but I also had to build some automations and some other tools to streamline that process and to make it work really, really well. Networking has been huge. We lead a local real estate investor networking event the first Saturday of each month. And so tomorrow, actually, we'll be out there with a good friend of mine who's a local wholesaler. Now he's doing a lot of fix and flip stuff. And he's going to be teaching people how they can get started with wholesaling. I think there is there's a category of the market that want to deal with a cash buyer, and there's a cash buyer out there that's willing to pay somebody that found them a deal. So,
Mhm.
that it's a service that can be provided to the market. And if you got time and no money, it's the easiest way to start getting involved, because you can spend your time making phone calls, knocking on doors, doing what have you, to try to find somebody that needs to sell their house and they can't do it any other way.
I really appreciate your time here, Tyler. This has just been fantastic. One more time, I'm going to point everybody to your link tree for all your corresponding links. And it is real_Tyler Gibson. I'm going to have that as a clickable link in the show notes. Before we dive into the rapid fire, is there anything we should have tried to hit on here today?
I don't think so.
No, you did great. This was awesome. Well, if you're ready, we'll dive into the rapid fire and close out this episode.
Let's do it.
What lie do real estate investors often tell themselves?
I got to do more deals.
Can you expand on that? That's interesting.
Just do better deals with higher profit margins. You'll have
Yeah.
less stress.
I'm going to share this. One of the things that we've learned quickly is that we kind of do what's called a bit more wholetailing, or the minimal viable product,
Sure.
MVP.
Yep.
And get it on the market quicker. And we found that our margins are roughly the same.
Yeah.
With less headache. So if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
House hack early, house hack often.
Do you have a book recommendation, or what are you reading right now?
I'm actually listening to Ninja Selling again by Larry Kendall right now. But I just finished Amplify Your Influence by Renee Rodriguez, and I would recommend that to somebody.
So I'm going to have to check out this Ninja Selling. It kind of sounds a little like I recently read The Introvert's Edge, and leaning into that, because it's kind of funny being a podcast host. You'd think I'd be the opposite, but I am quite the introvert, and leaning into that is a better sales approach. So
Yes.
when we're talking about sales strategies, it's almost like what rings true to you versus like I went through the Grant Cardone sales method and it just didn't connect. Like I just
Right.
can't sell like that. What single strategy or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time-saving impact to you or your business?
Hiring a virtual assistant has been the biggest buyback of my time.
Buy back your time, Dan Martell.
I realized early on the value of time. There's a book called Who Not How that is essentially the same kind of thing, right? Don't
Yep.
worry about figuring out how to do something. If you can pay somebody who already knows how, then go find a who.
Yeah, something that's been ringing in my ears lately from Martell is the concept that you get paid what you believe you're worth.
Mm.
And if you so he even advises people to sit down and take a snapshot of your day and all of the tasks you're doing. And if you value your time at $100 an hour or $500 an hour, or whatever it ends up being, some of the tasks you're doing, are they worth, would you pay somebody $500 an hour to do that task? Likely not. Then why are you doing it?
Right.
So, well, I really appreciate your time, Tyler. One more time, you can find him through his link tree, real_Tyler Gibson. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes, but really great to meet you. And I value your time here today. It was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.